Levine, Lynn Cohick, Marianne Mai Thompson, Carolyn Osek, Beth Falker-Jones, Beverly Gavanta, Ruth Haley Barton, Margaret MacDonald, Nancy Ortberg, Amy Peeler, Nancy Beach, Christina Cleveland. And I'm old enough to say this list has grown exponentially in my lifetime. There was a time, well, when not many women were in this line of work. But that day has ended, and their books ought to be on any respectable thinker's shelves. Who are the women preachers you listen to today? A friend of mine once told me she was preaching at a church where no woman had ever preached. After a few times preaching, an old man came up to her and informed her that, while he was formally against women preaching, after listening to her he became convinced that women not only could preach, but also ought to be preaching. I often ask my friends who are podcast listeners, which women are you listening to? Fleming Rutledge, Mandy Smith, Barbara Brown Taylor, Tara Beth Leach. I know for me it was reading Morna Hooker as a PhD student that shook me out of lethargy about women as Bible teachers and theologians. I have heard others say it was listening to Billy Graham's daughter, Anne Graham Lotz, that made it clear women not only can preach, but also ought to preach. Speaking of authors and preachers, Lucy Peppiatt, though not as well known in the United States as she is in England, is both a wonderful theologian-author and also a dynamic teacher-preacher. Read her and listen to her. Who are the influential moms in your church? When the roll is called up yonder, and those on the list tell their stories about how they came to faith, the number one on the list will be moms. My mother told me about Jesus as a child, and in your church are moms singing to their babies, telling their children the gospel, and guiding the next generation into discipleship behind Jesus. This truth must be told. If we relied totally on males, I'll not complete that sentence, but I will say this unabashedly. Moms are the number one reason why the church has grown and is growing. Anyone who thinks women can't teach, preach, or instruct others in the faith needs to take a long look at the moms in church and then apologize for foolishness. Moms are evangelists, catechists, teachers, and preachers, from the house to the church. Which texts in the New Testament need to be explored the most in their historical context? I became aware of the careful theological and biblical work of Lucy Peppiatt when I read a small book of hers about 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 2 through 16. In that book, Lucy made it abundantly clear that not only were there a bewildering list of possible interpretations of vexing expressions like head coverings and what head means, but the interpretations many were suggesting were flat-out contradictions of either the Bible itself or of one another. She offered a different question. What if the problem isn't the women, but the men? And she offered a different solution. Some of these lines that don't fit our theology don't fit into the Bible because they were the words of Paul's opponents being quoted. She had me there, and I've followed her work ever since. This book will introduce you not only to her reading of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and 14, by the way, but also to her approach to many issues. I am so grateful to Lucy for this wonderful packaging of all her best ideas about women in the Bible and church. She's probably got more, so take this as a sampling. What about Mary? One time my mother asked me what I was studying, and I told her I was studying about Mary. She said out of her Baptist orientation, "Why is she so Catholic?" Welp, I took a big gulp and reminded her that she was the mother of Jesus and that she's all over the gospel pages, so often that she's mentioned only slightly less than Peter. I'm on a crusade to get so-called Bible believers to believe just what the Bible says about Mary. The fact is she's a powerful young woman, a powerful mother, and a powerful mover and shaker in the Gospels themselves. Who else?